This has come up a lot lately, so I figured I'd talk about it. Catholic sex abuse has a very, very, very long history, and whether they like it or not, they don't want to talk about it in realistic, rational terms. They spend all their time making excuses, and that's a problem. So, I stumbled across this article written in Psychology Today by Thomas G. Plant. And of course, he's religious and he's written articles and books on religion, so I guess it's not really much of a surprise that he's trying to defend Catholicism here. Now, I don't want to go into a lot of detail on the article necessarily. I'm just going to use his 4 points as a jumping off point on why people, especially atheists, are so critical of Catholicism and the whole sex abuse scandal. And it's why Catholics are so fast to defend their church without understanding, or let's be honest, caring, why their church has so many problems. So, let's go take a look. The first claim is, no empirical data exists that suggests that Catholic clerics sexually abuse minors at a level higher than clerics from other religious traditions or from other groups of men who have ready access and power over children, for example, school teachers and coaches. Okay, so what? Because this isn't about Catholics being worse than other secular organizations. It's about the fact that the Catholic Church has a very, very, very long history of covering it all up. This is something that I see from Catholics a lot, the claim that schools and whatnot are just as bad as they are. So what? Schools and whatnot don't shuffle pedophile teachers around to other schools. They don't refuse to report it to the police. They don't refuse to take responsibility. Those teachers get arrested. They get prosecuted. They go to jail. They are outed in the media, and the schools do absolutely everything in their power to make sure that those teachers never get left alone with children again. The Catholic Church, yeah, that's not what happens there, is it? They have a long history of just shuffling these pedophile priests around, moving them from one place to another so that they can go on and molest children. That's what we're complaining about. The problem isn't so much that it happens, but the reaction that the church has to it happening. Plant writes that things are better today than they were in the 70s. Okay, so what? This is a problem that has existed within the church for centuries. Martin Luther, back in the 1500s, criticized the Catholic Church and their sex scandals of the day, arguing that allowing priests to marry would alleviate the crisis. And guess what? Nothing has changed. You still have the same problems today that they did more than 500 years ago. And that's what we're complaining about. It isn't that the Catholic Church has been dragged, kicking and screaming, into personal and financial accountability by a largely secularized society. If the RCC still ran the show, they wouldn't change a thing. Why? Because they don't have to. And yes, it's not like other churches haven't had problems. They have. And sometimes they react the exact same way that the RCC has acted, by hiding problem clergy and shuffling them around so that the church itself doesn't look bad. When you care more about your public image than you do about innocent children, there's something seriously wrong. But this has been institutional within the Catholic Church for centuries, and there's really no reason to think that it still isn't. I'm not seeing any evidence that they are purging problematic priests. I only see that they are handing over pedophiles to the police when the police come knocking at their door. It's not the same as changing your ways. It's being caught with your pants down and being forced into it. But let's move on to the next point. Number 2 says clerical celibacy doesn't cause pedophilia and sex crimes against minors. Now, I think there's a misconception here, and it's pretty much everyone's fault. I don't know that most of the priests engaged in these sex acts are pedophiles. They wouldn't choose those children as their sex partners of choice if they had the options of having other relationships. The problem is, they don't have a choice. They are prohibited from having normal, natural sexual relationships with anyone. I know that I'm going to go into this more in the next point, but it's why male-on-male relationships among priests is so common. It's why so many nuns get raped. This isn't just about children, it's about these poor men, and women for that matter, who are being denied a basic biological requirement and satisfying that need wherever they can find it. Unfortunately, children are a common commodity where priests are concerned. They're all over the place, and their parents are willing, for some reason I will never understand, to leave them alone with these horny male priests who desperately need to get their rocks off. Just because you promise not to have sex, that doesn't turn off your biological programming to do it. It doesn't go away just because you wish it would, or because you make a promise to a magical man in the sky. You get these men, and women too, because nuns are guilty of sexual abuse as well, who are going down the only avenues available to them, and far too often, that's with children. And the fact that children have been programmed by the religion to blindly trust the clergy and do whatever they say, that makes them the perfect plaything for the frustrated Catholic priest. That doesn't mean that these priests are necessarily pedophiles. It means that they're being tortured by their beliefs, and they're lashing out the only way that they can. On to number 3, which reads, homosexual clerics aren't the cause of pedophilia in the church. You're right, they're not, because most clerics aren't gay either. It's the same reason why there's so much man-on-man sexual contact in prisons. It isn't because all of these criminals are gay. It's because they have no other choice. Studies have shown that most men who have had gay sex in prison, they go back to having heterosexual relationships once they're released. They're not gay, they're desperate. But the RCC is desperate too. They are desperate to point fingers at absolutely everyone but themselves. They want to blame homosexuality or pedophilia, but they don't want to blame their own policy. It's not the Catholic Church at fault. Oh no, of course not. It has to be some evil sin, according to church doctrine. And that's really where this whole thing becomes such a mess, because they're playing a game of finger pointing with their religiously derived evils and pretending it isn't them to blame. It's all the other things that they hate. They don't have to take any responsibility for their actions or lack thereof. They just have to pretend that they were right all along, and it's the evil gay people and the pedophiles who have somehow infiltrated their ranks. That doesn't explain why they protect these people, though, other than wanting to save face and pretending that they're on the side of the angels. It's all about publicity. It's why Pope Benedict demanded that nobody tell the authorities about sex abuse and to investigate it all in-house. Because they just don't care about the children. They only care about their public image. And that's how it's always been, and I'm sure nothing has changed today. So let's go on to the last point, which reads, the church has used best practices to deal with this issue since 2002. And I don't know that I believe that. Publicly, sure, that's what they say. Why? Because they're trying to get out from under billions of dollars in victim restitution awards. They have tried to shift the burden to their imaginary boogeymen. They have lied, they have cheated, they have stolen, and now they want us to feel sorry for them. No, I'm not going to. I have no reason to trust the Catholic Church on this. They have proven many times that they'll lie to your face if it benefits them. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, yeah, shame on me. And the problem is, I really can't think of how they would prove that they're on the up and up. I don't care what they say, I care what they can demonstrate. I don't know, maybe let independent investigators have full access to internal Vatican records? Prove that absolutely every incident that has ever been reported to Catholic investigators has been turned over to the authorities. Just throw those records wide open and prove that you're being honest. Now, I don't believe for a second that they will do that, because every single time that the courts have demanded that they open their records, the church has sued to keep them closed. Why? Because this is far more widespread than the church wants to admit. Because I'm willing to bet that a lot of the people who diddled kids back in the day are now in positions of power within the church, and they're now looking to cover their own asses and the asses of their friends. If the Vatican wants to convince us otherwise, let's open those records and prove it. Let's see what ex-Pope Benedict did back in his younger days as a Nazi youth. Let's see who Francis was messing around with back in his days in Buenos Aires. I'm not saying they're guilty, but I'm not saying they're not either. You can't be sure without a full investigation. Anyone want to predict when the Vatican throws open their records? I mean, the real records, not censored versions, not a duplicate set, but absolutely everything they've got. Yeah, me either. It's really kind of amazing how much the Catholics get wrong. They don't want to take any blame for themselves, so they pretend that they've somehow been infiltrated. It isn't their policies, it's the imaginary gay and pedophile boogeymen that are to blame. They're doing everything right now, trust them. Sure, trusting them is what got us into trouble in the first place. I don't trust them farther than I can throw them. And if you want me to trust you, you're going to have to prove it. Show me the evidence. I don't want to hear your lip service. I want to see that you've cleansed your system, and you'll never do that. And the reason they won't do that is the same reason they won't allow their priests to marry. It's the same reason they won't restrict children, all children, from being left alone with a priest or other clergy member. Because they really only care about their reputation and their bank accounts. They haven't shown any real concern for innocent children getting molested or for nuns getting raped or anything like that. They only care if people keep throwing money in the collection plate every Sunday. That's the Catholic Church. It's really all churches, because lots of churches have problems and they all pretty much treat it the same way. It's very rare that a church turns a pastor over to the police without the police already banging on the door. I don't know that the Catholic Church is voluntarily turning over evidence of sexual abuse that nobody has been complaining about. It's only when a parishioner is threatening a lawsuit that they act. It's only when the police are already there that they go, "Oh yeah, we've gotten reports." If that's wrong, then by all means, someone correct me. Prove that's not what happens. Because I haven't seen that happening at all, and I haven't seen any evidence that it is. But hey, what do I know? I'm just going with the evidence. I'm not a professional apologist for a criminal organization like Thomas G. Plant is.